All right, so welcome to the Community Sustainability Panel. This is a last moment almost initiative by me, just trying to say this could be a useful kind of discussion to do it openly around CPAN and Perl and Raku and our open source communities in general on whether or not we are operating in a sustainable fashion. So we quickly asked around to see if there's somebody who's in an easy targets to put on the chopping block. So we found some tall chairs, and hopefully we can talk about some interesting perspectives around how we can together make both Perl and CPAN and Perlmongers and the ecosystems and communities around this and our relationships with Raku, because they're not going away and we're part of Raku as much as they're part of us. And our relationships with the open source world in general. This is, and with businesses and with the commercial sector and our role in society. All this is on topic for the next 55 minutes maybe or so. And I'm hoping that we have a few thoughts to share, and I think it's okay if you have something super relevant to share in a terse and quick manner. That it's okay to raise your hand. And do we have somebody who will be going around? Yeah, Max will go around with a microphone, so please wait for Max. And let's start with just very quickly introducing ourselves to see why we're sitting here and hopefully bring to the panel. And let's start at the end with Ferenc.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Ferki. I'm basically finishing my second decade in the industry, mostly focusing on infrastructure solutions and building reliable high-performance systems. And of course, a big chunk of that is automating all that. And for that, I chose Perl to do the heavy lifting. As part of that, I maintain Rex, the friendly automation framework on CPAN. And recently, I also got the chance to participate in a Perl Toolchain Summit, where we could see the community in action. And there was also a lot of sustainability related work, meaning how we can go forward together and how to optimize things and make sure things keep working.
Right, hello, I'm Julian. I could speak German, but I choose to speak English. I've been doing Perl for nearly 20 years now. Most of my professional life just sort of ended up in a Perl company. And a lot of my work these days isn't really writing code, but instead I'm teaching people how to write code. So I've run a team of junior developers. I'm going to be speaking about that later as well. And I think in terms of sustainability, I care a lot about that we get more people, that we get people interested in the language, that we get the people who've been here for a long time to not burn out, stuff like that. So I think I'll have thoughts on that to share.
So I guess you know me. I'm Sören. I organize Perl workshops and go to Perlmongers meetings. I work a little bit with Perl, but not too much. I've been working a lot in corporate finance and have come across the idea of sustainability. You can ask me questions later on that, but I've come across it again as a hobby when educating myself about global studies and environmental science. So sustainability, as you will hear it on the news, will mostly have something to do with that. And for some reason, Salve thought I'd make a good panel member.
Well, you did have a short talk about Perlmongers.
Yes.
Yes, so that is relevant.
And it's sustainable.
That's a sustainable question. Yeah. So my name is Salve Nilsen. I've been involved in Oslo Perlmongers since the beginning. Had some Perl activities in my life since the last half of the 90s. I'm the person to blame for the Perl QA hackathon, which turned out to be the Perl Toolchain Summit. That's like the one thing I've made that actually matters. The rest has just been work. I was not fishing for applause. But I have talked about Perlmongers and open source community stuff, and had that as my thing going on in the background of my mind for all this time. And usually when I try to make something happen, I try to look for something nobody else does, and it often turns out to be the organizational stuff. Community organized by accident or something, in a sense. Sometimes I look for opportunities and don't have skills enough to shut up when I should have done so, and then enjoy the conference instead of sitting on a panel with other people who are smarter than me. All right.
That's switching off an alarm. That should have been there.
Yeah. We have already mentioned Perlmongers, so I think that's a very good way to start this. Maybe you could say some of your thoughts on that, and then maybe lead that into something we can all mention or talk about. I don't know.
Well, maybe I could. I wasn't prepared for this, but it fits fine because you've seen my talk about Perlmongers and have seen a few groups have disappeared. And while we don't see it in Frankfurt PM, we're still going strong with 3 to 8 people every meeting. In general, there are fewer of these kinds of meetings around. We have heard from Vienna, they still meet, but only when somebody gives them occasion to. So please visit Vienna and say you need an emergency Perlmongers meeting, so they keep going. But we have noticed in the Perl community especially that people get older and the younger people have stopped coming. Not totally, but mostly. So we have to look into that. If we want to keep Perl going, younger people must be made interested in Perl in some way. We have to show them that it's not only for the old people to make money off Perl, and I think we do. There is a career in that. We have to show them. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you guys have any thoughts around Perl on community meetups and such?
Yes, I think it's a very core part of the Perl world to have all these meetings, like the Perl workshops or the conferences, like YAPC or the Perl conference, as it's called today, and also the local Perlmonger groups. And my personal experience about them, I felt it overwhelmingly positive. So my first YAPC was in Sofia, like 10 years ago, around 11 now. And then I also attended next year Granada, and I felt like so warmly welcomed by people with whom I never met before, just saw them online or used their modules. And I felt immediately included into like the community effort, and I did not feel like an outsider, even though I was like, it was my first 2 participation in the community in person. And that's where I learned about all these different levels we tend to have, and also had the chance to visit Barcelona after Granada, where the local Perlmonger group held an emergency social just because of that. So that's all these community events play a big role for me personally in keeping up with doing this and keeping participating. So I think without that, I might not be here today because the community matters a lot. And I also feel like since I get a lot from the community through every interaction online or like using results or like they use my results, I think it's an essential part of like keeping it sustainable going forward.
Yeah, I think I can add to that. I mean, I felt the same way. My first one was Frankfurt. the YAPC in 2012. That's 13 years ago, isn't it? It's crazy. I remember I only came because someone on Stack Overflow had written a comment under my answer saying, hey, you've just made lots of points on Perl, you should come to this YAPC. It's in Frankfurt, and you're German, aren't you? So I sent him an email. It was someone called Daxim. Sent him an email, and he responded in German. He wrote this like really long email back telling me about conferences and why I should come, and he was super supportive. And that was fantastic. And then, as I said yesterday, I ended up meeting Wolfgang over there while queuing for beer together with Mithaldu. The three of us were just like standing in the same queue trying to get a beer, and we talked, and we ended up remaking the Hanover group. And then we met every 2 weeks going forward for quite a long time. Incidentally, it was easy because we were at my dad's restaurant, and that was like super easy. We always got nice food. We always had like a free place to go. And then we volunteered to run the Perl workshop in Hanover. I think I accidentally volunteered us at the Berlin one. It was the first German Perl workshop I attended. So the next year, then I volunteered us to do it. And that was a really good decision. It was so much fun. Such great turnout. And I missed that. And when I moved away to Berlin, I think the Hanover group didn't last much longer because some other people also stopped. Basically, like, I think 1 or 2 more people left the company that I had just left. And then all of the driving people were gone. And I think, Wolfgang, you left as well. You went back to Nuremberg, didn't you? So, and then that was it. And Hanover PM was done again, which is a big shame. And Berlin, I think I only attended once. And I think they just met in a different way, and it didn't really work for me. But then London PM, where I'm now, they're quite fun because they just do the social meetings. They just go to the pub. And then if you have a tech meetup, there's an entirely different group of people there. Just the problem with the tech meetups is they're so infrequent and they're so hard to organize, just like London PM, London Power Workshop. And I know, Lee, if you want to pull the lightning talk out later as well that you gave about organizing it. It's so much harder to do the London one than to do this one, I think, just because of the finances. And I think that's a big sort of issue for the community and for sort of like keeping this going. I feel like doing it in Hanover, it wasn't easy, but finding a venue and finding the money to pay for the venue was easy, because in London it costs like 5 to 10 times as much to get a single day than what we paid for 3 days worth of conference in Hanover. And yeah, I don't want to volunteer us again because I'm not there anymore. But I feel like it would be easier to do it to, well, yeah. Someone says Paul should organize it. I feel like I'd like to do it again, but I struggle with London. Lee did so much work for the last London one, and I really only did the being there on the day and looking in charge. But Lee's better at doing the actual organizing. Yeah, so I hope we can get another London one going. That would be cool, and seeing lots of you there as well would be cool. But we need these events, and we need new people. We need to bring new people in. And on that sustainability, actually, and then I'll hand it over. I had a friend from my other hobby visit London during the time while we had the Power Workshop. So this augmented reality game I play on my phone. A guy from South Africa, he was visiting. He had a layover day or like a stopover day in London the day of the Perl conference, and he asked me, hey, where should I leave my bags? And I said, hey, you work in IT, just come to our free conference. So he went, and this morning, like yesterday or 2 days ago, I saw something in the game that he had done here in Munich. So I messaged him. I said, oh, like, look, you must have come through here. I can see it. I'm at a Perl workshop. And he said, that's cool. I'd love to go to one again. Let me know when there is one. And he doesn't even do Perl, but he wants to come back because we were so nice to him. Yep. So I think that worked. So we have to keep going. We have to keep doing that.
Yeah, lots of really good stuff. I want to share a little bit, not of what I've done, but more of the future of Perl mongers. Because I have to be truthful and say that the COVID thing kind of killed a lot of activity, and it's time to actually try to change that back to the normal again. And I have an extra reason there, since I'm one of those strange people who are involved in the CPAN security group. One worrying narrative we have been thinking about and discussing a little bit has been around trust on CPAN, on who do we trust to take over the modules that we depend on, who are capable and trustworthy to become a co-maintainer or even just adopt a module. That is something you just can't buy or vote for. You kind of have to meet the people that you are going to trust. And for me, the Perl Mongers and other meetup groups like this is a way to get to know the people that you depend on. So there's not only like a social need for an open source community like this, there's an actual economic need also. Like we need to be able to trust the people that we depend on, because they write the software that we use in our digital infrastructure, that we use as a foundation for our businesses and our other activities. And if we cannot trust people, then we have to just write it all ourselves. And that quickly becomes very, very expensive. So in a sense, just organizing meetups on Perl Monger groups or contributing so that the social events and technical events like this one happens is actually going to become more important going forward with the new requirements from the European Union and the laws there. The Cyber Resilience Act that I talked about yesterday. So doing the social thing and being nice to each other, we know how to do that. It's not that difficult, but now we should also think about this as a way to ensure that we can keep on getting the value out of the open source languages and modules and communities also, to make sure it keeps on supporting us as it's done now for 20, 30 plus years. So if there's something in here that makes you consider organizing something at wherever you live, please just do it. There's nothing that blocks yourselves to just invite somebody, and you never know how many show up. But make it interesting and fun, and get to know people, and then we have something to build on. And right now, we kind of need that.
I just wish to add one more data point from my side through my recent Perl Toolchain Summit experience about the trust and like accelerating things. I think that's what happened during Perl Toolchain Summit around CPAN testers, for which I was like volunteering for mostly, but it turned out there are like a lot of other community projects who might be in a same or similar situation. And I'm not sure how much you followed the recent history and background around it, around CPAN testers. It's like there has been some kind of ownership change over time, but it was essentially a one-man show for too long. So some reliability issues were creeping in over time, and it was like hard to keep up as an isolated one-man project. And I was fascinated by how we as a community realized there was a problem, there's a person in need of help, and then we tried to reach out. Initially the communication was like not so fast because this person was overwhelmed, but we ended up in a group call to discuss what the situation is, what we can do, like what's the way forward. And more than half of the people from the same call had the chance to meet during Perl Toolchain Summit. So there's now a group, a team taking care of CPAN testers, and we already stabilized it. So it's like not having long outages or like weird errors and so on. And this, like Perl Toolchain Summit as a social event, has greatly accelerated all that effort because like, I don't know, I think I first reached out in last August, but like we did a lot more during 2 weeks, like leading to Perl Toolchain Summit and after, than in the previous months, just because like we had, you know, a dedicated place and time to work together and meet in person and build this trust, even though we already work together online. but no, what we talk about in practice is like giving root access to those servers running the infrastructure, right? So that's not something you hand out blindly to strangers on the internet, even though if you see them on IRC for years. So to develop that kind of collaboration and trust, I think the community and the social events play a crucial role.
I think we have a few leads now on where to proceed from here. We talked a little bit about organizing and the importance of that. We also talked a little bit about having a place where we can come and feel welcome. But the act of making someone feel welcome, that's maybe a skill in itself. And I think we could dive a little bit into that if you want, Julian.
I can try. Yeah, I think it is a skill, and I think it comes from, I don't know who started it, like it's how I experienced it when I first arrived at a Perl event, and I've just kind of I've taken it on board, and I just keep doing it, and I've taken it to other communities I'm a part of as well, and I think that there's a positive influence there. Like, I think not being a dick is a really good starting point, which leads nicely maybe to one of my topics I added to our list. Not dicks. Which is sort of like generally caring about people. And I think we're very good at that because the community has been going for so long, and a lot of us have known each other for such a long time that there's a lot of friendship and there's a lot of personal relationships that have grown over years. Like, I look around here and there are people I've known for over 10 years. There's people here who've stayed at my house. There's people here where I've stayed at their houses. And that's, that's a wonderful thing. And every time there's someone new, a lot of us don't know how else to behave. So we do the same. And I think that works. And I think we have to keep doing that. And we are doing it. We just need the opportunity to do it more. Which is really one of the things that are missing, as Salve said, because the whole COVID just took such a big toll on everyone, and then no one wanted to go out anymore. Remember the German Perl workshop right before the lockdown started in Erlangen, where we were all like, okay, we're not hugging anymore, and that was so weird. And then we tried not to touch doorknobs anymore, and everyone was trying to like push doors open with their feet, but we still sat in the same room, breathed on each other. I don't know how much good that actually did, but after that it was just really weird. And Daniel, you organized the remote Perl workshop, which I think was very appreciated at the time. But also I remember sitting at home trying to record a talk, and it took me multiple attempts at recording myself giving a talk, and I sucked at it, and it was so horrible. I hated every minute of it. I don't know if it turned out well, like doing a 20 or 30-minute speech on camera with no audience, and it's not even live, is so hard. And since then, I've done so many presentations online for work and for my other hobby. I can do like a 1-hour presentation on my own, sitting on my desk, when there's 100 people watching it that I can't see. But the idea of recording it up front is still horrifying, and I don't like it. And I think it was good at the time. It was necessary at the time. It helped us through it. But I hope we don't go back to that. I hope we come back to more of this and more regularly, and that the other local groups can find a way of having meetings again. Maybe Austria and Switzerland can have an Alpine Perl workshop again. Maybe there are people. I mean, there used to be a lot of Swiss people that came to the German Perl workshop, and some Austrians. And where are they now? The only Swiss and Austrian people here aren't, actually. They're just bloody immigrants like me.
Wir haben einen Schweizer.
Haben wir einen Schweizer? Hey! Ich glaube, wir haben auch einen Österreicher, oder? Das ist der Österreicher. Sehr gut. Yeah. So I have to get those back. There used to be a Nordic Perl workshop, Salve.
Yeah. very difficult to do anything right now. While the topics of Perl workshops and Nordics are super interesting, I was actually trying to get into how to make people feel welcome, and because we have to kind of get on to the other topics we have. And one of the things that I know you visited me a while back, and we talked about mental health. And you told me then that in the UK and in the US, we have a few organizations, or at least one organization that helps people to learn something about how to discover if somebody is having a bad day or is struggling with something.
So yeah, that's good. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, so as I said, I work in the UK, and at some point during the lockdowns, our company said, who wants to be a first aider for mental health? So in the UK, it's there's a charity called Mind, their mental health charity, and then there's Mental Health for England, which is another charity, but they're more like the organization that help people with training, whereas Mind is the one that you call if you feel shit. So what I did was a mental health first aider class, which was a couple of weeks of very intense and somewhat unpleasant content. Yeah, it is unpleasant, but it's also necessary to talk about, to learn more about recognizing, as you say, when someone is down, when someone is anxious, when someone is maybe suffering from a mental illness, which is no different to having a broken leg. If you have a broken, it's not really your brain that's broken, it's more like your thinking that's broken, or it's your self-confidence that's broken, or maybe you can't sleep anymore, or maybe all you can do is sleep, maybe you don't want to do any work anymore, or maybe it's worse and it's all just really dark. Those things are normal. They happen to everyone. They've happened to me. I've had burnout from work at a Perl job, and then I went and moved to a different city and that cured it for a while. But it's quite normal, and I think a lot of us have experienced things like that, and often we don't know how to deal with it. And I think as a community, we should do more to help each other with that, and to look out for each other, because we can. And I know, I think some of us have done that for each other in the past, and have reached out when someone disappears, or have tried to just be there and be friendly. But I think we can also do more, and I think maybe that's something that community could have as more of like a general, not a rule set, like sometimes we speak about codes of conduct and stuff, and that's not where I'm going. But I think keeping in mind that we can do more than just not be dicks. We can do more than just be nice. Sometimes we can, when we ask, how are you today? We're not expecting someone to say, oh, I'm fine. Of course I'm fine. Like, it's okay to say, actually, I'm quite shit today, and I haven't slept, or I don't know, it's like, I can't do those contributions I wanted to do now because I feel shit, or whatever. And it's okay to talk about that, and it's okay to listen to that, and like, we shouldn't be afraid of that. And I think as like such a large ongoing community, it's been around for such a long time, we can maybe try to do better at that, because it does affect us all.
Okay, I hadn't planned to do this here, but I had thought about it. I've learned about trauma a lot, and the first disclaimer is talking about trauma, unlike talking about suicide, which doesn't trigger suicides, that's a misbelief. But talking about trauma can trigger trauma responses and trauma as well. So trauma is something, I talk about it anyway, is something that happens in a moment where you can't really deal with it, and your mind doesn't create memories the way it usually does. So it doesn't create the picture that usually would be there, but puts it into fragmented parts, and sometimes you see a shard of that part, and some strange reactions happens inside you. And some people go into fits. And if you happen to come across that at work or on the street with somebody who you know and who normally isn't like that, starts getting very, very angry and going into some kind of fit, or it might be catatonic, doesn't move anymore, so on, that might be a trauma response, and you have nothing to do with it, and you can't really look inside that person and find out about it, and you shouldn't. But you can do something, because trauma usually, nearly always, happens when you're powerless. So the trauma, the trigger for the trauma happens in a moment where you had no choices. You couldn't help yourself in that moment. And you can get people out of trauma responses when you give them choices. So you see that, and as I ask them, are you sure you want to stand in the sun? You might stand in the shade over there. So you've given them a choice. It's absolutely simple. It's so simple you wouldn't know. It's like, do you prefer water, sparkling or not? And you have given them a choice, and they will get out of the trauma response. It's really so simple. Everybody should know that. Okay, I digressed, but it's about mental health.
Yeah.
Care about it?
May I add a bit more
Yeah.
to that, because I think it's the right time, and I feel like I'm also connected personally to this topic very much in the past few years, let's say. I also experienced burnout several years before, and it, to say the least, not fun at all. It practically knocked me out from tech, from open source contributions for a long while. It was very hard to recover to some kind of more sustainable pace of volunteering on one hand. So I definitely want to do everything I can do to avoid that, but also to help people, help others, and like support others. So if you feel like struggling with something and just want to chat with someone, feel free. I find it important. I also felt often that like I don't have anyone to talk to about these issues, especially like other professionals. On one hand, and also like just kind of today, nowadays, in the past few weeks and months, I'm also like going through a lot of like trauma and a lot of struggles, and it's like I usually say that's an extremely dire life situation. It's completely unusual, but like it is like what I want to send a message with this, like it's like to normalize to talk about this, and like you are not alone. Everyone has like ups and downs, and it's like we already established it's a very nice community. So to talk to each other often helps a lot and kickstarts things, and like can bring in new perspectives, right? So it is important part and very important for sustainability as well, to keep going and not just like stop or like quit altogether.
This makes me think that maybe a part of this is also related to just the act of asking for help. While we could talk about asking for help when it comes to mental health, that's actually not where I'm trying to lead. It's just a step back always to organizing events. Just to say that I would love to make something happen, but I need help. That should be, and I think that is okay to say. And it's actually okay to say, you know what, I'm not going to take a lead, but I will help. Because that it only requires like 3 or 4 people to make organizing something into something which is easily manageable on your free time. And just opening that door mentally isn't that hard. It might require some effort, but I think it's worth doing. And there's a little bit of a sidetrack now. Last year, I read an interesting blog post, and that made me think, why don't we have a really good way to ask for help for our open source projects? And threw some ideas around, and that ended up with me together with some other people starting a project called CycloneDX Sustainability Working Group, where we try to create a machine-readable specification, a format, where we can decide and specify what kind of help our project needs. And with project, I also mean community. Like a file that you can drop into your project on CPAN or in your Git repo that says, I'm looking for somebody who can help me organize an event or help me manage some financials for that event. Or I need somebody who can draw me a logo or a mascot so I can create a visual identity. We made a long list of ways to contribute, so we could have that file at some point. Let people choose what kind of help they're looking for, and have that be communicated in a predetermined manner downstream to the users. So if there's a business there who maybe doesn't have a budget for sponsoring an event, maybe they can set aside a few hours a week by the designer to put together that logo that somebody asked for, that project which that business depends on. So my point here is that in order to create sustainability of any kind, we kind of have to allow ourselves to ask for help in any way that exists, not just by talking in a chat room or in a GitHub issues tracker. We have to actually go around and speak with others and take a chance. Like maybe there's somebody who believes in the same thing or likes what you're doing and would like to help and has a little bit of capacity. Maybe their kids have grown up and now you suddenly find out that you have a bit more time. They moved out maybe. That's we're in that age group, many of us right now. Or we just change our priorities so that we can decide to make something positive around us, but we don't know where to go unless somebody gives us an option. And the way to give the option is to actually tell about it. One thing we tried in Oslo at Perl Mongers, an event, a conference we organized together with a bunch of other communities in 2016, I think, or 15, I don't remember, was we put up, let's call it a soapbox, a stage, where we had the possibility to stand on top of that stage with a microphone and say, hey, I have something that needs to be happening. Very much like what we're doing during our lightning talks. In between each lightning talk, somebody can step up and say, hey, I'm doing this, please join me, let's talk about that. But make it such a way that you can do it all day long. And there's an open microphone, but your expectation is you have short messages to get the word out there. That's a way to get the word out there. It's one of many. Use whatever ways work so that people can know that there is a place for them where they can contribute. I would like, if there's nothing more around mental, I think we covered the mental health a bit, okay. But asking for help, there's one thing which a lot of open source community already have started working on when it comes to asking for help, and that is around funding. And money and sustainability is it's an interesting topic. I have, over the last 20 years, heard a bunch of stories, and one of the stronger impressions I've got was that the person I'm thinking of now felt, several people actually, felt that the moment we introduce money into volunteer work, something important dies. We don't like that. And that has made me think a lot, because kind of in a sense, money does play a role in our lives. We kind of have to pay our loans or rent, have food and all that stuff. And not all of us have the luxury to hack on some interesting stuff for fun. And not all of us have the luxury of having a workplace that allows us to work on the things we think are important for the ecosystem. So maybe we need to create some options here, and maybe we need to think a little bit different about this. Do any of you guys have some thoughts on this? I think, Perl, you had some.
Yes, also just my t-shirt says, pay the maintainers. I think it is a very important topic and like core to many open source projects who, I don't know, have a considerable user base or contributor base. So sooner or later, the topic comes up, I think, in most communities. but perhaps also in like one-man shows, of course, like CPAN testers, and it's like, how are we going to get servers where we can run it and so on. That's a type of funding to get sponsored hardware as well. So not just like money directly. And what I noticed as the maintainer of racks over the past more than a decade now, while I'm with the project, is we are completely volunteer based, so we did not have any money involved in the project, and we often received feedback from several community members that they specifically use racks because of there's no company behind it. So funding goes kind of both ways. So you can build a successful and like well-working community without the funding as well, of course. It's just like different types of trade-offs. And at this point, I feel like if we would make Rex somehow like more commercial projects, or we have a, I don't know, foundation around it or a company, that would deter a lot of users. Maybe it would also attract others, but that would be a huge change, a huge shift in the community, right? So what we built in the past like 15 years total means like we have to restart it all over again. So in that regard, funding is more like a independent topic for every individual who is interested in that. So it is a free product, Apache 2 license. It's on GitHub and CPAN. So everyone who wishes to build a business around Rex, that's like completely possible. The license allows it. We even like encourage people to offer services. Like if somebody wants to go with, let's say, custom development or provide support for Rex and so on, that's like welcome, or write books about it, right? So there are like many ways to earn money and like help keep it going. Also, sometimes it's nice to get hired to work on Rex itself. That does not happen often, but like there are a couple of users who were like invested enough in the success of Rex, who decided to approach some of us in the maintainers and contributors to contribute back on paid time or like pay for contributions. So this kind of funding as a question is like, I think, far from having a single best answer for every case. It's like very situational. I think it is important to find a good balance between various things, because like the software is free, but the labor to produce, maintain it, and do it sustainably is not. So where the good balance is, I think, is very individual, depending on both the projects and the persons doing it. Yeah, I think it's like kind of end of the thought already.
Yeah, I think this, we got a new panel for participants. Before I go to you for a moment, just stand here, so it's okay. I think the part of this is also around what kind of opportunities we have available for funding. And right now, there aren't that many. You can ask for coffee donations and small donations on GitHub, for example, or there's something called Tidelift, which can help you. There's something called thanks.dev. The Perl Foundation has a grant system that offers a few thousand or a few hundred euros, I'm not entirely sure, for smaller things. But making a living or getting enough money to just make it working at least part-time on open source, that should be an option, and the opportunities for that are a little bit lacking. There are some foundations around there. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that afterwards. But one thing which I would love to point out in that with the Cyber Resilience Act, there might be an opportunity here. By the fact that businesses will be requiring due diligence to be performed, and that work needs to be done by somebody who's most likely actually is involved in the coding of the thing that they want to perform due diligence on. So businesses will be having a reason to pay for this work. And setting up a structure for that is something we're trying to figure out now both in the CPAN Security Group and in the Perl Foundation. We have a channel for that on the TPRF Slack server. So I had to mention that. And Mark Overmare, you felt that you had something important to add.
Yeah, the problem is the Perl community gets much older. I mean, 25 years ago that all the main modules have been started. And I don't know whether you started your own module, but you start something big, people are using it, you do it for the company, you have some earning for yourself, but after a while, you change your projects, but you still maintain those old modules. So I am having a few very large modules, and none of my projects, which I do for commercially, use any of those modules. And there's totally no funding to maintain it. And that's one of the sources, I think, for the big problem on CPAN at the moment, that there are a lot of really big projects who have no real maintenance at all anymore, because no one is paying them. So we need funding. TPF funding is nothing. And if it is not AI, then all these other funders will not give you anything. And that's really a problem.
I think it's, yeah, I agree. I think there are some ways to get a little bit funding for some activities. There's some large funds in the Netherlands, and the Net Foundation.
Yeah, I speak about Mailbox. Soon it is sponsored by Nelnet. But I try to survive from fundings, and I can tell you it's not possible.
All right. Here's a part of sustainability, which is, I think, is, thank you, by the way, which I think is useful in general. And that when we talk about funding, say, for example, public funding of open source, public code, public funding, that's what's it's called? Not a saying, but a banner I've said somewhere, somebody who said this is a good thing to do. That's a political statement. And one thing we can all of us do is to try to help our politicians and colleagues, not just the business, but the society in general, start thinking about supporting the people who are making up our own digital infrastructure. Yes, the funding could come from foundations like the Net Foundation or the Alpha Omega Fund or the German Sovereign Tech Agencies Fund, but they have certain goals and certain societal requirements that they want to achieve. So it's not all small projects who are able to ask for money there. If it's important enough, you might get something and it's worth trying. But there's nothing for the long tail of projects out there. And that's where I'm hoping that the Cyber Resilience Act steward organizations out there eventually can make a difference. But how long that will take, I don't know. It might take 2 or 3 years before something is up and running. And it will also require a mind shift. It will require from our business managers to start thinking about open source in a different way. The narratives around open source, not just CPAN and Perl, but all of open source have to change. Because right now, open source projects and components that we rely on are just like a resource that is for free and you can create a business on, and that's it. That's fantastic for the business. It's brilliant for the shareholders. But strictly speaking, it's an externalized expense from the perspective of the business that they haven't had to pay for since the beginning of free software in the 80s. I don't mind that. I think that's a good thing. But it's obviously not sustainable. So the business out there, they have had their dinner now for 20 years, and they've stuffed themselves full. And it's time to pay the bill. And one way to do that is for businesses to actively start supporting open source. And they can only do that if the people like you guys here who work with the open source or run a business who cares about open source and uses open source actively does something. We have a few sponsors here. Those are the exceptions. Those are the fantastic few who are competent. There is an enlightened minority among businesses out there who know how important open source is. And thank you to those few who have managed to not abandon open source or just be the what's the word for it? Beneficiary is a very nice word. I was aiming for something less nice. But the majority out there doesn't treat open source, and that has to change. Is there anything else we could stop here in the last few minutes?
Well, just to interject, I actually see this new law as a chance for us, because I firmly believe that there are few among us who are not cybersecurity experts yet. Learn from Hacker School that you're not saying you are not. No, you're not yet. And I've also been thinking while we've been speaking here that even though we are a tightly knit community when we're in one room, when we leave the room and go home and start our daily work again, we might be working on our own. We might forget that the others are out there. So we have to think that if something goes over our head, who's the one to ask for help, for support, or for guidance, just where to go with it. And reflect this on our employers or on our customers, that there's a new need through a new law and has to be dealt with, and means more work for the people who now volunteer. So some money has to go their way, in what way ever possible. We've been talking about it behind the scenes. If we can build a new grant-giving foundation somehow, maybe it already exists. Maybe there are organizations who could jump into that role. And then we have heard that this isn't enough. Even if we do it, doesn't mean we shouldn't. We have to come up with good ideas to find a better way of funding and to work sustainably.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think we're out of time. I think we're almost out of time.
A final word.
Final word from each of us. Keep doing Perl. Keep bringing people to Perl events. Keep hiring new Perl developers. I think we've got a few over there that are fresh. You're doing well, I think. Keep doing that. Train them. Bring more. I'd love to see more young people. I can't bring my own young people to the German Perl workshop. It's a bit too far and they don't speak any German. It's hard enough to teach them Perl. I can't also teach them German. But keep doing that. I think that'll help. Thank you.
Yes, closing thoughts perhaps. I've seen personally, there's a lot of value in open source and including Perl and CPAN. I have the chance to build infrastructure for billion-dollar companies. So there's a lot involved, a lot of value. And if you would like to take some of that value, I'm not hiring, but you can hire me. Keep it sustainable.
Yeah, to keep you sustainable also. All right, and my final word. Thank you everybody for joining here. We have one big question point from the audience, which is fine. We maybe have a few raised hands if we have time for it. We're nodding here because we started a little bit early. Maybe we can stop a little bit late. 1 second before we take that. My final thought to share before we go on here is that what we are to each other here is I don't think there's a really good, precise word for that. And I've been trying to look for it. Because we are not third-party suppliers for each other. We have a relationship between ourselves as employees and business owners and people who make value and the open source maintainers out there. We are more like we have a second party type of relationship, not a third party. We are open source colleagues. And I think we should start thinking of the open source communities that we depend on and the people we depend on more as colleagues and friends rather than strangers who magically produce stuff that we get for free. And with that attitude change, I think we can make things sustainable as a whole. But it actually requires us to stop thinking of open source as a free resource and rather about the people who are individuals and humans that we actually kind of need to care about, because if our open source colleagues have a really bad day at the same time as we're having a really bad day, that day will become really, really bad. And let's keep that in mind. So I think we could move on to some questions. Here's one who raised the hand.
Yes, you talked about asking for help. And I think one hurdle for that is the inherent fear that there come strings attached. Because companies always want to have something tangible, something accountable. So if you ask for help, they have to quantify how much they can contribute if they want to contribute for something concrete. And we cannot always guarantee that the work we do something concrete for them. So the strings attached, I think, is one hurdle when asking for help. That is, yeah.
Thank you. So in that regard, yes, that's a very like real aspect of it, of getting help, and that's also like partly like, you know, feeling vulnerable or like be seen as vulnerable, like I cannot solve this on my own. So what I try to do in that regard around my open source projects, I do have an open source office hours for every project, which already has my name on it. So I contributed to it, so I maintain it. And it's like completely free and it's like bookable in my calendar directly. It's like let's work together, hack together, think together. And since it's all free, just like the software we produce, that's one of the ideas behind it, is like to don't have these obstacles to make communication happen. So there's absolutely no strings attached.
There's another question.
Another question.
Right. Not directly a question, but I haven't interacted with them, but I know there's a thing called the Sovereign Tech Fund, at least in Germany. And they seem to be sponsoring a lot of open source development, infrastructure, all kinds of things. Maybe that is something where that is applicable to some projects out there. Do you have any experience with that?
I have. By the way, Sovereign Tech Fund changed names to Sovereign Tech Agency a few months ago. And that's in order to make themselves more of a permanent fixture in the German bureaucracy and have a recurring funding going. So it becomes itself, let's call it sustainable. And yes, they are actually quite open. I had a chat with one of the people there at the Open Source Summit in Vienna in September. They mainly try to look at security-related efforts in such a way that they can ensure that if some important software that is, meaning it is used massively among many places, not just in Germany, but anywhere, that we can get some predictability and sustainability around that. They have a substantial process around this, which means they will try, if they find out that you are in scope, you will have to have a conversation with them, and it might take half a year or maybe even more, depending on scheduling, to get some funding there if you are in scope for them. but they make sure to offer enough money so you can actually make a living of that, maybe a year at a time. And they have enough funding so even larger projects with multiple people could work on it. For example, no, I can't come with an example. So yes, that is an option, but it's not an option for the people who are publishing software in somewhere in the long tail, the small projects that are in use, but maybe not as popular, but would still require some attention. Any other questions, maybe? Or comments? Last question. Do you have one over there?
So what are your ideas to make Perl attractive again for the younger people? Because from my feeling or from my understanding, we are currently working from the bottom, and the top companies, like maybe 20, 15 years before, don't use Perl anymore, and the young people always more looking on the financial side of the job, and maybe not like our old folks are doing it for the fun and the enjoyment maybe. So how can we make the core more attractive? And do we have a collection with real ideas to pull up young people?
So I don't think we're in a position to answer that, and I don't think we have to answer this. I'm going to attempt to answer this in my talk later, actually, but I don't think it matters. Like, we're at a stage where we can't make the language attractive so people start using it. Like, that ship has sailed 15, 20 years ago. It doesn't matter anymore. When you hire young people, you hire them because they want a job in tech, and they will do the language you use because that is the job, and that will pay them a salary. I think is that accurate, guys over there? You took the job because you got the job, and it happens to be Perl, right?
Yeah, living in open, they're learning PHP, Java, or whatever for the beginning, learning the programming language. Then we switch them to Perl. So it's hard enough to find any developer.
Yes, I'll just sum this up. You were saying, so this is Cosmo Shop over there, right? They were saying, we'll just take whatever, and whether they've done PHP or Python or Java, it doesn't matter, and then we switch them to Perl. Very interesting. My experience from the UK is they come from uni. They maybe know a bit of Python, they maybe know a bit of Java. I don't care. I say up front, this is a Perl role. No one will have read that. No one will know what it means, but it doesn't matter because there are hundreds of applicants that want the one job, and they will take the job if it's Haskell or Perl or PHP, or they have to write Ruby, or they have to write I don't know what. It doesn't matter to them. And once they start training, they're going to like it. And they're not leaving, and they're liking it. And then all you have to do is get them on board to come here. And my experience is that happens maybe 1 out of 10 employees ever in a company will be interested enough to come to a conference. Maybe 1 out of 10 of those will contribute. Quick show of hands, who of you has ever published something on CPAN? Okay, half. Okay, that's pretty good, half. But yeah, like, not everyone who goes to conferences will actually actively contribute code to the community. We can contribute other things, but a lot less people who work with this day by day will go to the events. That is just a fact of life. I worked in a big company. We had, like, I don't know, 50 or 60 Perl developers at Strato in Berlin. Like, 3 of us went to events. It's just how it is. But that's not all we need to do. We just have to bring people in.
I actually have an answer for you that isn't just a, dismissal. It's not a dismissal, but I have a little bit of a fantasy going on. Like maybe I'm living in my own bubble and being delusional, or delulu, as they say, the kids say these days. Apparently so.
Start cooking.
Okay, start cooking. So I think we have a feature in the Perl and Rocco languages that are kind of unique in a sense, in that it has a linguistic foundation, a linguistic heritage. And that allows us to actually do things. I think it should make it easier for us to produce software that is interesting and fun and engaging to read. So here's my proposal. If you're writing something, that you know will be read by someone in a month, in a year, by yourself or a colleague, write it in such a way that you keep them in mind as an audience. You are not writing just instructions, you're writing a narrative, something that not just should explain something meaningful in such a way that you can read it once and then understand it, but you write it in such a way that once you've read it once, you want to read it again because it was so well written. If you try that, I think just allowing our colleagues, our future colleagues, to just dive into the code and say, oh wow, this was actually fun to work with. I want to work more with this. I think it's a way to get a little bit out of the current rut we're inside now, just by sharing the joy of elegant solutions or beautiful solutions in such a way, or fun even, in such a way that people can start talking about how awesome that module is, and coming back to someone else's code and saying, you know, it's an enjoyment to work on that person's thing. Instead of having a bad day at work where you are pulling your hair out because of quote unquote legacy code, which is another word for code that earns money. You can say, I had a good day. And the person who wrote that code could say, I made someone else's day better by writing good code. And I think that should matter too. And we can do that with Perl and Lockheed.